Morning Independence, 95 days to Super Tuesday. And if you watched yesterday's episode, you know what kind of coffee I have in here this morning. And if you watched yesterday's episode, you've already seen this mug, which if you haven't seen it says, I used to be a party animal, now I'm an independent voter. And I had these made for the campaign. They're not available yet. I did give some of them away to the very first people who subscribed to the newsletter, and I haven't shipped them out yet, but I will be doing that very soon. Today is December 1st. It's officially the last month of 2023 and the holiday month. Most of us celebrate some kind of big holiday celebration this month. The next one actually coming up is Hanukkah, which is December 7th through the 15th this year. And I was always jealous that they got to party for 8 days and that those of us who celebrate Christmas just have the one day. I don't know why we couldn't have at least made Christmas December 25th through the 27th, like at least a long weekend or part of the week, but we haven't gotten around to that yet. And then there's another holiday in addition to Christmas. It actually starts the day after Christmas, December 26th, is Kwanzaa, and that runs until January 1st. And I wasn't sure how many people celebrate Kwanzaa, so I looked it up, and it's somewhere between 2.5% and 3% of the country said that they'll have some kind of a little Kwanzaa celebration. And I'm curious if anyone in the district here celebrates that, because I've been here for quite a while and I've never met anyone who celebrates Kwanzaa yet. So if you do, reach out to me. And then of course we have December 31st, New Year's Eve, the big evening at the very end of the month. And then New Year's Day, exactly 1 month from today. So it's a very exciting time of year, but more exciting than all of that, 6 days before Hanukkah, 24 days before Christmas, 25 days before Kwanzaa, 30 days before New Year's Eve, and 1 month before New Year's Day. Even more exciting than all of that, 95 days. Just 95 days now. We're approaching the 3-month mark. Actually, on December 5th, will be exactly 3 months to Super Tuesday. That's a pretty big milestone. So, and the other fun thing is that there are lots of Christmas parties going on. Lots of workplaces hopefully have Christmas parties again, since we're post-COVID. I know a lot of that got shut down for 2 or 3 years. And I think it's important that people are at work in an environment where they don't have to be working, they just get to chat with people. And now this year, if politics comes up, you can talk about how there's a new option this year, and you can talk about how you've decided that in your older age, you're no longer going to be a party animal, and then just get the conversation started that way, and see what your colleagues think. So, exciting time of year. And I was going to talk a little bit more about the history of the red and blue cuffs on my shirts. Last night's episode, I showed you the sewing setup and that I actually have made these myself. I showed you how I make them, but you probably don't know that it actually goes back over 10 years. I think back to 2010 or 2012, somewhere around there. I was still interested in politics back then, just never ever considered running for office. And I realized that all of these bills going through Congress were huge. They had all kinds of different things in them. And I had no idea what was actually going on, what was in these bills. And I think most members of Congress actually had no idea what were in these giant bills. And at the time, I didn't understand why they were passing bills that covered so many different categories and were tens or hundreds of billions or even trillions of dollars at the same time. I never understood that. I now understand why they do that, and it's so that they can leverage certain politicians. It's really like, this is where all the corruption stems from. They will cram so many different things into a bill that are completely unrelated, from social programs to military spending, and they will also include provisions in those bills that will help a specific congressman's district. And that way, if he or she chooses not to vote for something, then they can leverage that against them in an attack ad in the next campaign. So they'll say this candidate voted against these things, even though it was the other 90% of the bill that they weren't happy with and that they actually voted against. And this is one of the things that really needs to stop. We have to stop waiting for everything in our federal government to be approved by Congress in a single bill. It needs to be broken down into smaller, single or related subject spending bills. And that doesn't happen for the most part. I know there's a few congressmen and congresswomen trying to make stuff like that happen now, but most people are not on board. And I honestly think it's because of that's how the corruption actually works in Washington, D.C. They leverage these giant bills and the provisions in them. They can leverage something in the bill against every single congressman and woman in Washington, D.C. And that needs to stop. And so I didn't understand that at the time that I started this project. I called it The Political Boss, where I was building a website to try to break down these bills into different categories and how they would affect the different categories. I came up with, I believe, 10 or 12 different categories ranging from the environment to debt to jobs in the economy to deficit and other categories. And I was going to try to come up with as objective a way as possible to rate the bills in each of those categories so that people could understand what was in all of these bills and how they were either positively or negatively affecting the different categories. So for example, if something increased taxes, you would be able to see that. If something increased the national debt, you would be able to see that. If something improved the environment, you'd be able to see that. And then I was going to try to tie the votes of the members of the House and the Senate to those bills. And so then you'd be able to see whether your representative, your senator, was good on the environment, or good on the national debt, or good on jobs in the economy, and all these different categories. Then I got busy working and got married and personal life and everything, and I kind of had to push that off to the side. But the point is that the logo on it was actually an image of myself in a suit that I had used software editing to edit, and I had a red cuff and a blue cuff on the dress shirt. And that is the origin story of the red and blue shirt. And I also had a dress shirt made that had the red and blue cuff on it. So the story of this goes back to 2010 or 2012. Probably much longer than you thought, but it's fortuitous that I'm now running for office as an independent, and I'm trying to split the two parties, and that's why I've revived this sort of brand that I'm now using. So it's been a long time in the making. Maybe it's fate. We'll see how all of this goes. That is the origin story of the red and blue cuffs. So now you know how I make the shirts and where the idea originally came from. That's all I have this morning for Joe with Joe. I may or may not do a Joe on the go and an evening Joe because I have lots of business stuff I have to catch up with here at the end of the week. And then I just have to run my daughter around this afternoon to some activities. So we will see you. And if I don't, I'll see you tomorrow morning.